Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And I have a little bit of a cold. I've been feeling sick the last couple of days. I don't have COVID because I've tested every day since I started feeling sick. But there are people in my house who do have COVID, so we're playing it safe. But if my voice cracks or if I just kind of sound like I'm down, it's because I just don't generally feel good. We have a quick announcement, and then we will move on to the news. Ford and Chevy's earnings calls were this week. We're going to go ahead and listen to Chevy's earnings call on Tuesday and Ford's earnings call the following Tuesday. I want to hit Ford, Chevy, Fisker, Rivian, and Lucid this quarter, and only because there's just lots going on in the EV world. We're not going to listen to the whole earnings call pretty much like we do with Teslas, where I'm only going to take out little bits and pieces. I'm going to try to keep them under 25 minutes. But those will be Tuesday releases, and then Friday will be news releases. All right, moving on to our EV news, Magna International. This is a company that builds vehicles and vehicle components and accessories for other companies. They are expanding their EV operations in and around St. Clair, Michigan, not Minnesota. There's a lot of Saints in Minnesota, but not in this case. It's St. Clair, Michigan. Magna is going to build 2 new plants, creating 1,500 additional jobs. Included in the expansion plans are adding on an additional 740,000 square feet to their existing St. Clair facility. They're also going to build an additional 200,000 square foot powertrain facility, and then they're going to build a 110,000 square foot facility to supply things like seat frames and trim and all the stuff that's necessary to build a car but isn't, super sexy. Overall, Magna is planning on spending $500 million on the projects. If you've never heard of Magna, a lot of big auto manufacturers partner with them in one form or another. So in Austria, Magna is building the Fisker Ocean. In China, Magna is building cars for NIO. And in St. Clair, Michigan, Magna actually builds the Hummer EV. So that's pretty interesting. And speaking of the Hummer EV, GMC is recalling 735 Hummer EVs because of a battery pack sealing issue. Basically, it's not watertight. And as we talked about last week, or maybe it was the week before, water in the battery pack is bad, not good. So they're recalling those so that they can seal them. Ford CEO Jim Farley announced that the F-150 Lightning with extended range battery can travel 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. That's about half a second better than initially announced by Ford. Ford has a habit of under-promising and over-delivering, which is not a bad thing. Initially, Ford said the extended range Lightning would have a range of around 300 miles, while the actual range is 320 miles. In other Ford-ish news, Ford invested in autonomous car company Argo AI. We now know that Argo AI is shutting its doors. In 2017, Argo raised $1 billion, which seems like a lot of money to go through in just a couple of years. A significant portion of the investment came from Ford and Volkswagen. Some of the employees of Argo AI will be offered positions with Ford or Volkswagen to further their autonomous driving endeavors. Ford's, not the employees. All 2,000 employees will be given some type of severance package, depending on if they continue on with Ford or Volkswagen, or they just, part ways and go do something else that's probably going to be great. So that's good. The employees are going to be taken care of with what I assume is, whatever's left of that $1 billion. We now know the Ioniq 6 First Edition will cost £54,995 in the UK. That's about 63,803 euros, and roughly the same amount in dollars. The first edition customers are going to be paying a bit more so that they can, get the first edition of the vehicle, but also they're going to get some additional goodies. They'll get exclusive interior and exterior designs, which I don't know that that's all that important to me. 20-inch wheels with matte black finish. I'm not a big wheels person. However, I do appreciate them. I'm not going to spend any extra money on them, but I appreciate them. And then they'll get some other stuff that you can look up because I'll put the show notes in the article. And if you're curious as to what this car is going to cost in a Rubin Florin, it's $114,853 a Rubin Florin. And you're asking yourself, why are we doing a Rubin currency? The car's not even going to be delivered in Aruba, or at least the first edition. And the reason why is because there's one person in Aruba who listens to this podcast, and I just want to let them know that I see you and I would like to say hello. If you would like to say hello back, my email is bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.com. Now, one of the things that I think I'm going to do going forward is I'm going to include currencies of countries that listen to this podcast but aren't like the big four that I usually talk about, which Europe is not a country but is a region. Europe, UK, Canada, and the US. I always quote prices in those countries' currencies, and I very rarely quote them in any other countries' currencies. So I'm just going to go through the stats every now and again, and I'll just throw out a random price in a random country's currency just for fun and just to let other people know in those countries that I appreciate that they listen to this show. Any hooser, back to, that was a weird sidetrack, back to the Hyundai Ioniq 6. There's only going to be 2,500 units released, and they're going to go to key European markets: Germany, UK, France, Norway, and the Netherlands, which is the land of my ancestors, according to my grandpa. Not Aruba. But in any case, this is pretty cool news. I'm excited to see the Hyundai Ioniq 6 in real life. I really want an electric pickup. However, this is a really nice offering by Hyundai, and it calls to me. Let's move on. Lucid Motors has released some new accessories. That was a very hard sentence to say. Among those accessories is a connected home charging station. What is a connected home charging station, you ask? Well, it's just a home charger. Lucid claims that their level 2 charger will provide 80 miles of charging power per hour, which is insane. I mean, it's a big battery pack. It's a 400 mile battery pack. So you would need to get this 80 miles per hour. You would need an 80 amp circuit delivering 240 volts. Which is a very expensive setup. I mean, you're probably looking around $4,000, if not more, depending on your situation. So that's pretty insane. However, there's some pretty cool features about this. First, you have a 24-foot cable, which is nice because if you own a Lucid Air, you probably have a big giant garage and you want to park your car where you want to park it. As long as you've parked it 24 foot away from the charger, you're in good shape. It's going to be Wi-Fi enabled. The charger supports bidirectional charging, which allows you to, feed power back into your house in the event of a power outage. But that requires additional equipment on top of putting in the 80 amp circuit and paying for the connected home charging station, which costs $1,500. So it's a little expensive as compared to a lot of the other charging options out there. However, if you can afford a $160,000 to $200,000 car, you probably don't care that you have to spend $10,000 to get a charger installed. It's probably not going to be, that big of a deal to you. It's expected to ship on November 30th, and it's pretty. It's a good looking home charging station, as home charging stations go. Electrify America has been implementing battery energy storage systems, or BESS, at their chargers since 2019. Basically, they're just battery packs at the at the charging stations. They've even partnered with Tesla to install power packs at these locations. Electrify America has around 800 charging stations with about 3,500 individual EV chargers. The company, Electrify America, has announced its first megawatt battery storage site backing a charging station. So if you're like, ooh, this is good news, don't get excited unless you happen to live or travel through Baker, California, which is between Barstow and Las Vegas. If you're in that situation where you're going to Las Vegas, or you travel that road a lot, or you live in that area, then get very excited because you're going to get a megawatt battery storage backup at that charger. Now, if you're wondering where the Electrify America station is in Baker, it's right underneath the world's tallest thermometer, which is between a Del Taco and the Country Store and Dessert Cafe. Excuse me, not desert. So, pretty cool. And, you get to stop and see the world's tallest thermometer. This might be something that when I get an electric vehicle, I might have to go just to get a picture of whatever electric vehicle I ended up getting and the world's tallest thermometer. I am tickled pink that's actually a thing. I've driven through Baker before. I didn't know this. I wasn't paying attention, and it was mostly at night. But still, in my 20s, I used to drive that road quite a bit. Enough about my 20s. Let's talk about EV sales in the U.S. for Q3 2022. I'm not going to read out all of the EV sales because I don't think it'll be all that interesting, but I did pull the top 5. So I'll put a link in the article a link to the article in the show notes if you want to read the whole numbers. But it's pretty interesting. The top 5 EVs for Q3 2022 were the Model Y at 60,271 vehicles, the Model 3 at 55,030 vehicles. The Chevy Bolt sold 14,709 vehicles, which there's a big difference between 55,000 and then the third one is 14,000. There's quite a gap there. The Ford Mustang Mach-E sold 10,414, and honestly, I really would have thought that the Mach-E would have sold more than that. I don't know if I would have thought that they would have sold more than the Bolt, but yeah, pretty insane. And then the Model S sold 9,171. So not too bad. Quite a spread. So if you look at all of the vehicles sold in the last year, in 2022, we still come up with some interesting numbers here. So total sales for 2022 up to Q3 of 2022, that seems all very confusing. Model Y sold 191,451 vehicles, and Model 3 sold 156,357 vehicles. So almost 40,000 vehicles in between Model 3 and Model Y, first and second place. Pretty insane. And then it gets more interesting. So between after Model 3 is Ford Mustang Mach-E, which has only sold 28,089 vehicles. The Model S sold a total of 23,464 vehicles. And then bringing up the rear in the top 5, we have the Chevy Bolt EV EUV, which sold 22,012. So if we add up all of the electric vehicles sold in 2022, and then we take out the Model Y, the Model 3, the Mustang Mach-E, the Model S, and the Chevy Bolt, so we take out the top 5, all of the other vehicles in the list, which I actually should have written down how many, but there was a lot, they only sold together 156,211. So only 156,211. That's still less than the Model 3 sold. The Model 3 sold 156,357. So everything under the top 5 sold less than what the Model 3 sold. And if we were going to add in the next 3, which is the Bolt, the Model S, and the Mach-E, it's 229,776. That includes everything except for the Model 3 and the Model Y. Just the Model 3 and the Model Y together, total more vehicles sold in 2022 than the rest of the EV market in the US. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Everything else is 229,776. And just the Model 3 and the Model Y are 347,808. I think we can say this is a success for Tesla. That's just crazy. Like that's an insane amount of vehicles Tesla sold when compared to the rest of the EV market. Fantastic for them. All right, last story in our EV news segment. A proposed New Jersey law would prevent automakers from charging in-car subscriptions. I like where this is going. We've talked about in-car subscriptions last week, and we've talked about them quite a bit over the last couple months. I don't want to pay a monthly subscription for things that are already built into my car. Like, I don't want to pay a monthly subscription for heated seats or to use the radio or to activate the brake. You know, these are all very silly things to charge you for. And I mentioned this last week, but it's all just comes down to greed, these kind of subscriptions. The proposed New Jersey bill would ban subscriptions for any feature that, and here's language directly from the bill, utilizes components and hardware already installed on the motor vehicle at the time of purchase. The features must be able to function without ongoing expense to a dealer, manufacturer, or third-party service provider. So basically, the dealer, the manufacturer, or the service provider can't charge you. The bill goes on to state that provisions of this bill do not apply to any third-party service provider that offers features such as satellite radio or in-car Wi-Fi. So that's okay to still charge for, which I think that's fair. I haven't read the whole proposed bill, but I wonder where full self-driving or enhanced autopilot falls in this bill, because technically all of the hardware to run full self-driving is built into the car. It's not a connectivity issue, really. Enhanced autopilot, same thing. You can argue that the car has autopilot, which uses all the cameras and things like that in the software. So it'll be interesting. Overall, I do think that upgrades like full self-driving, enhanced autopilot, Blue Cruise, Chevy Cruise, and the other autonomous driving offerings, I think that they will be exempt from this bill. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see until the bill comes out. Interesting stuff, though. All right, that's it for our EV news. Let's go ahead and move on to our Tesla news. SpaceX has started taking orders for Starlink for RVs. The nice thing about Starlink for RVs is you're only billed month to month, and you can pause or unpause the service at any time. So this is really great. If you're out and about in your RV, turn the service on. You get back home, you turn the service off. Easy peasy. Customers can expect delivery sometime in 2022, which is rapidly closing. Hardware will cost you $599 with a monthly subscription charge of $135. You will get a free 30-day trial with a full refund. That includes a refund on your hardware. So if you don't like it, there's really no risk. You get the 30 days to try it out. 24,000 Model 3s are being recalled because of a physical issue with the car. So an actual issue. This is not fixed by an over-the-air update. This is an actual physical issue with the car. The recall affects vehicles built from 2017 to 2022. And I should say that affects some vehicles that have had specific types of service done. So let me read to you Tesla's wording on this. Servicing certain components in the Model 3 vehicles requires disassembly of the second row left seatbelt buckle and the center seatbelt anchor, both of which are fastened by the same bolt. Both components may have been incorrectly reassembled after disassembly during a service action. So it's not an issue if you got your car off of the factory floor and you've never had any service done to it that would require that bolt to be loosened, then you're in good shape. But if you have, I'm sure Tesla will be reaching out to you. The good news is it's an easy and fast fix. Tesla has released software update 22.40.1. One of the improvements in this update is that there's better battery thermal controls, which improves DC fast charging. And this basically has everything to do with preconditioning the battery. So it's, all nice and warm and toasty and ready to accept that big fast charge. So they've made that better. And I'm sure there's some other things that I'm probably making it too simplistic, but it's pretty good news. At the earnings call last week, Elon mentioned that the not yet announced entry-level EV will cost about half as compared to the company's current company architecture. This is what Elon had to say. It's the primary focus of our new vehicle development team. Obviously, at this point, we are done with the engineering for Cybertrucks and Semi. So it's obviously what we're working on, the next generation vehicle, which will probably be about half the cost of the Model 3 and Y platform. I think this is fantastic news. I would love for Tesla to have a more affordable vehicle. I mean, I'm not going to point out that the Model 3 and the Model Y were supposed to be the more affordable vehicles and not the $50,000 to $60,000 versions, because right around the time the Model 3 was announced, there was, the Model S was right in that price range. It was probably a little over 60. So yeah, I'm super stoked that this is a thing. I do want to caution, though, that just because Elon says that it'll be half the price of the Model 3 or Model Y, I don't know if he's talking about half of the price, the retail price, or half of the manufacturing price, which it doesn't necessarily mean that Tesla has to pass those savings on to us. I'm sure it'll be quite a bit cheaper than the Model 3 or the Model Y, but it doesn't mean that it's, going to be half of the cost of the Model 3 or the Model Y. My guess is the starting price will be somewhere around between $35,000 and $40,000. If they can get lower than that, that'd be awesome. But at this point, I don't have, a significant amount of faith that they're going to get under $30,000 with this car. Unless it's just like a one-seater, then maybe that's the case. Tesla is lowering the price for some of the Model 3s and Model Ys that they sell. Unfortunately, the price reductions are only in China. And it sounds like, if you read the articles, it sounds like the move is really for Tesla to be more competitive with Chinese automakers like NIO and Xpeng. I'm curious as to when we'll see price reductions here. It's going to happen at some point. I'm just curious as to when that point is. Let's jump into some Cybertruck production talk. First up, we're going to talk about the 4680 battery cells, which we've talked a lot about lately. Teslarati is reporting that the 4680 battery packs for the Cybertruck will be built at Fremont. With the issues that Tesla has had with the 4680 cell, it really makes sense that they, start simple and just build the battery packs at Fremont, where it's already up and running, or at least until Tesla finishes the battery manufacturing plant in Texas. If you're a Cybertruck reservation holder and you're concerned with that information, Elon has said in the past that he doesn't think that Cybertruck production will be held up by the 4680 cell bottleneck. Now, whether you choose to believe that, that's up to you. I'm not going to make that judgment call for you, but I have been burned before. I don't think this is a big issue, honestly. If 4680 cells become more constrained, does this mean that Cybertruck will use 2170 cells? I don't think so. I think the market and Tesla fans would see this as a huge fail on Tesla's part. Like the Model Y, some of the Model Ys have a 4680 cell, battery pack in it, structural battery pack, and some have the 2170 cells. But Tesla started building the Model Ys with 2170 cells. So if they can't produce enough 4680 cells and they start using the 2170 cells to get cars out, nobody's going to be too pressed about it. They're like, okay, I understand that. But Tesla made a big deal about the exoskeleton on the Cybertruck and the structural battery pack for the Cybertruck and the 4680 cells. If for some reason they went with 2170 cells, I think that would be a PR nightmare for Tesla. And I think some people would push back and not order their cars until the 4680 cells are installed in the Cybertruck. Like, I just don't see the 2170 cell thing happening. Apparently, Wall Street is asking what's going to happen. But moving on from 4680 battery cell talk, I think we've already talked about this before, but IDRA, the company making the Giga Press for Cybertruck, they also make the Giga Press for Model Y, they have confirmed that they have shipped the 9,000-pound Giga Press to Giga, Texas. I doubt this bad chicken is coming 2-day shipping, so it's going to be a little bit before it gets there. But still, really cool, really exciting. We're getting closer to a Cybertruck release. Hopefully, we're also getting closer to announcements on what the pricing is going to look like. All right. This is our last Tesla news story. Elon has been promising full self-driving since 2016. Really, he's probably promised it before that, but this is where my experience with full self-driving and Elon begins at 2016. And he's really been extolling the virtues of level 5 autonomous driving. I feel confident that everybody listening to this podcast right now has heard at one point in time or another Elon say that full self-driving was a year away or by the end of the year, and it hasn't happened yet. We're not there. And I've talked about this so much over the last couple of years. Way back in 2016, when Tesla announced Hardware 2, Elon said this is all the hardware that you're going to need, and you're going to have it in 4 years. And I think we can all agree that that's not the case. Hardware 3, we still don't have full self-driving. With the upcoming production of Cybertruck, we're supposed to have Hardware 4. Hopefully that actually does happen. And that's supposed to be, again, full self-driving. Elon has made this claim so many times that Electrek put together a video, a compilation of him saying that full self-driving is right around the corner, whether the corner be the end of the year or next year or whatever. The point is we still haven't had it. And as a matter of fact, him making this claim, like the most realistic he's been about it was in 2016 when he said it was 4 years away, which I've already talked about. And here's the thing, is I don't really blame or fault Elon for being super optimistic about full self-driving and failing. But there does come a time when you need to be realistic about your timeline, and then you need to be honest and open with your customers about your timeline. Because I don't think Elon's trying to con anyone, but people are believing what he's saying is true, and they're paying a ridiculous amount of money for full self-driving, and they're not getting the features that they're promised. Now, these are all things that I've said before. And again, I said I don't blame Elon and Tesla for making these statements. However, there are people or organizations who are concerned about this. And the Department of Justice here in the United States launched last year an investigation against Tesla and their self-driving claims in regards to several accidents or dozens of accidents involving Tesla's autopilot. And unfortunately, some of those accidents were fatal. Elon has repeatedly said that he thinks autopilot is probably better at driving than a human, or better being safer. So it'll be interesting what the Department of Justice thinks in terms of autopilot and full self-driving. Now, I realize that they're investigating autopilot and not full self-driving accidents, but in my opinion, Elon's been downright reasonable in his claims about autopilot when compared to full self-driving, which in my opinion, he's been very, let's just say, optimistic about the capabilities of full self-driving and full self-driving beta. So what do you think? You can email me. It's Bodie, Bodie, at 918digital.com. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the 2024 Denali Edition 1 EV. So first of all, they did like a 17-minute reveal, which I don't think had a lot of great information in it, but Will Arnett, he was the host, the actor. I think he's a good actor. Unfortunately, the copy that they made him read was really bad, and he sounded extremely unnatural. And that's probably a little bit to do with the editing as well. So I don't have any sound from the reveal because it was already pre-recorded, and it, like I said, it didn't sound natural. It sounded very robotic. So we're not going to pull any clips from that. We're just going to talk about the exterior design. The exterior design has some elements of the Chevy Silverado EV, which the Chevy Silverado EV looks like a Chevy Avalanche to me. Has some elements of that, but it also has more elements of just the GM truck body style. I personally think it looks nicer than the Silverado EV. Now, my wife was not impressed by it at all, but she's not impressed by any of the electric trucks that I've showed her, with the exception of the Rivian. She likes that one. And what I will say is she doesn't like it. That one was acceptable to her. The headlights on this electric truck look pretty cool, but they kind of remind me of a cattywampus greater and less than sign, so it's just kind of like off tilt. It looks neat though. The similar design for the tail lights, like the F-150 Lightning, the exterior lights on this truck will light up and play a little show for you as you walk up towards the truck if you have the key or the phone in your pocket. It's got a very large front trunk or frunk, which is powered, which is nice. There's an electrical outlet in the frunk, and there are electrical outlets throughout the truck, so you can actually do work with this, which I wouldn't because I don't work for a living, but people who do, this is important. The bed of the truck is 5 foot 11 inches long, so it's decent, but you get some extra space because the truck has a midgate. So basically, the back of the truck or the back of the cab where people sit in the back seat, that area can fold down, so the bed becomes extended into the cab of the truck, and that gives you 9 feet of storage total. But if you put the tailgate down, because you need a little extra room, you'll now have 11 feet total. So that's pretty cool. The truck features crab walk mode, which I believe the Silverado EV does too, but definitely the Hummer EV does. And Tesla has said that the Cybertruck will have crab walk mode and 4-wheel steer, which makes the car or the truck, very maneuverable. If you look at the interior, there's an 11-inch instrument cluster. It's got a full color heads-up display that shines on the screen in front of the driver, which that's really cool. The infotainment screen looks very similar to the F-150 Lightning infotainment screen, right down to the physical knob built into the screen. And as a matter of fact, one of the engineers for Ford tweeted at GMC, and they said, hey, you could have just asked us, we would have sent you the CAD file for that knob, which was kind of funny. A nearly 17-inch screen for that infotainment center. There's a nice mix of tactile buttons on the steering wheel, and there's a few underneath the infotainment screen. There's lots of center console space with a wireless battery charger for your phone. The Denali Sierra EV will feature a panoramic glass roof. It'll come equipped with Super Cruise, which you can use on 400,000 miles of compatible roads, and this will improve over time. Let's talk about specs. One of the things I want to warn you on specs is we really don't know what the specs are until they've actually started producing these vehicles and we get them on the road. Most of the time, car companies will do one of two things when it comes to specs. They will overpromise and underdeliver, which has happened, or they'll underpromise and overdeliver, which is what Ford and Tesla have been doing. So let's talk about the specs. Keeping in mind, they might not actually be the specs by the time the truck comes out. It's going to be dual motor, 754 horsepower, 785 pound-foot of torque, 400-mile range. There's no word on how big the battery size is, but it's going to be big. You will be able to charge 100 miles of range in 10 minutes. So that's pretty cool. 350 kilowatt DC fast charging. It'll have a towing capacity of 9,500 pounds. It'll have a payload of 1,300 pounds. Air ride adaptive suspension, which I love that. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Bi-directional charging, which is becoming a must-have when it comes to these EVs. Before we get to pricing, I just want to say, if I haven't said it yet, the specs that I just quoted you were for the Sierra Denali Edition 1, not for any of the other trims of the Sierra EV pickup truck, just for the Denali Edition 1, which is a terrible name. Absolutely terrible. Anyway, pricing. It's going to start at $108,695. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, that's out of my price range, I'm in the same boat as you are, friend. But in 2025, we should have a version of this truck that's around $50,000. I've seen some news outlets quote, 52, but it's going to be right around that area. And that'll be the Elevation. And then the AT4 will cost somewhere between $50,000 and $108,000. We don't know exactly, probably in the $70,000 to $75,000. Overall, though, this is a really nice truck, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in the wild. All right, everybody, that is our show this week. If you have any comments or questions on any of the things that we talked about today, email me. It's Bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.com. You can find me on Twitter at 918digital. I hope you all had a wonderful day, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.